Hannah was sad. Her heart ached with a deep longing that seemed to consume her every thought. She felt an emptiness that nothing could fill, a void that grew larger with each passing day. The source of her sorrow was her inability to have a child. In a society where motherhood was highly valued, Hannah felt incomplete and isolated. She watched other women with their children, feeling a pang of envy and a deep sense of loss. Her husband Elkanah loved her dearly, but even his affection couldn't ease her pain. She wanted a child more than anything. It was her deepest desire, a dream she held onto with all her might. She imagined holding a baby in her arms, singing lullabies and watching her child grow. The thought of being a mother filled her with both hope and despair. Hope, because she believed in miracles, and despair, because each year that passed without a child felt like a lifetime of heartache. She often found herself gazing at other people's children, wondering if she would ever experience the joy of motherhood. But she couldn't have one. Despite her fervent prayers and the support of her loving husband, her womb remained barren. The disappointment was a heavy burden, one that she carried with her every day. She felt a deep sense of inadequacy, questioning why she was denied the one thing she desired most. The whispers and pitying looks from others only added to her sorrow. She felt like an outsider, unable to join in the shared experiences of motherhood that bonded the women around her. Every year she went to Shiloh to pray. Shiloh was a sacred place, a sanctuary where people gathered to worship God and seek His blessings. For Hannah, it was a place of solace and hope. She believed that if she prayed hard enough, if she poured out her heart to God, He would hear her plea. Each journey to Shiloh was filled with anticipation and a glimmer of hope that this time her prayers might be answered. She approached the temple with a heavy heart but a determined spirit. This was a special place where people worshiped God. The temple at Shiloh was a beacon of faith, a place where the divine felt within reach. People came from far and wide to offer their sacrifices and prayers, seeking guidance, blessings, and miracles. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the sound of hymns. It was here, amidst the throngs of worshipers, that Hannah felt closest to God. She believed that in this holy place her prayers would be heard more clearly. Hannah cried out to God. With tears streaming down her face, she poured out her soul at the altar. Her prayers were raw and heartfelt, a desperate plea for a miracle. She wept bitterly, her sobs echoing in the sacred space. She begged God to remember her, to see her pain, and to grant her the gift of a child. Her prayers were not just words, they were the outpouring of a heart that had known too much sorrow. She clung to her faith, believing that God had the power to change her circumstances. She promised that if He gave her a son, she would give him back to God. In her desperation, Hannah made a solemn vow. She promised that if God blessed her with a son, she would dedicate him to the Lord's service for all the days of his life. This was not a promise made lightly. It was a testament to her faith and her willingness to sacrifice her own desires for the greater good. She believed that by making this vow, she was showing her deep trust in God's plan for her life. Eli, the priest, saw her praying. He observed her from a distance, noticing her intense emotion and the fervency of her prayers. At first, he misunderstood her distress, thinking she might be drunk. But as he approached and spoke with her, he realized the depth of her sorrow and the sincerity of her plea. Eli was moved by her faith and her heartfelt prayers. He listened to her story, understanding the pain and longing that had brought her to the temple. He told her that God would answer her prayer. Hannah felt better. Eli's words were a balm to her wounded heart. He assured her that God had heard her prayers and that she would be granted the desire of her heart. His blessing filled her with a renewed sense of hope and peace. For the first time in a long while, she felt a lightness in her spirit. She left the temple with a sense of calm, believing that her prayers had reached the heavens. She knew God had heard her. The assurance from Eli gave her a newfound confidence. She believed that her prayers had been heard and that God would fulfill His promise. Her faith was unwavering, and she carried this belief with her as she returned home. The burden of her sorrow was lifted, replaced by a quiet assurance that her miracle was on its way. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and peace, knowing that she was not alone in her struggle. She went home with her husband Elkanah. Together they returned to their daily lives, but with a renewed sense of hope and anticipation. Elkanah supported her through her journey, sharing in her faith and her dreams. Their bond grew stronger as they faced their challenges together, united in their love and their hope for the future. They continued to pray and trust in God's timing, believing that their prayers would soon be answered. Soon after, Hannah became pregnant. Her joy knew no bounds. The long-awaited miracle had finally happened. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment and gratitude, knowing that her prayers had been answered. The child growing within her was a testament to her faith in God's faithfulness. She looked forward to the day she would hold her baby in her arms, a living proof of the power of prayer and the goodness of God. Hannah was so happy. After many years of longing and praying, her deepest wish had finally come true. She had always dreamed of becoming a mother, and now, holding her newborn son in her arms, she felt a joy that words could hardly describe. Her heart was overflowing with gratitude and love. She had prayed fervently, and her prayers had been answered in the most beautiful way. God had answered her prayer. Hannah had spent countless nights on her knees, pouring out her heart to God, asking for a child. She had made a solemn vow that if God granted her a son, she would dedicate him to the Lord's service for all the days of his life. And now, as she looked at her precious baby, she knew that God had heard her cries and had blessed her abundantly. She named her son Samuel, which means God has heard. The name was a testament to her faith and the miraculous answer to her prayers. Every time she called his name, she would be reminded of God's faithfulness and the incredible gift she had received. Samuel was not just a name, it was a declaration of God's goodness and a symbol of hope for all who heard it. Samuel was a gift from God. From the moment he was born, there was something special about him. Hannah and her husband could sense that their son had a divine purpose. They felt a deep sense of responsibility to raise him in a way that honored God and prepared him for the future that awaited him. They knew that Samuel's life was destined for greatness, and they were committed to nurturing his spiritual growth. When Samuel was old enough, Hannah took him back to Shiloh. It was a journey filled with mixed emotions. On one hand, she was fulfilling her promise to God, but on the other hand, she was about to part with her beloved son. The road to Shiloh was long and arduous, but Hannah's faith gave her the strength to carry on. She knew that this was the path she had chosen, and she trusted that God would take care of Samuel. She kept her promise to God. Hannah's determination was unwavering. She had made a vow, and she intended to keep it, no matter how difficult it might be. Her faith was her anchor, and she believed that God had a plan for Samuel that was far greater than anything she could imagine. As she prayed, she felt a sense of peace and assurance that she was doing the right thing. She gave Samuel to Eli, the priest. It was a moment of profound significance. Eli, the high priest, welcomed Samuel with open arms, understanding the gravity of Hannah's sacrifice. He saw the potential in the young boy and knew that Samuel was destined for a life of service to God. Hannah's heart ached as she handed her son over, but she found comfort in knowing that he was in good hands. Samuel would live at the temple and serve God. From a young age, he was immersed in the rituals and teachings of the temple. Under Eli's guidance, Samuel learned the ways of the Lord and grew in wisdom and stature. He was dedicated to his duties and showed a remarkable devotion to God. The temple became his home, and the presence of God was his constant companion. Hannah was sad to leave her son. The separation was heart-wrenching, and tears flowed freely as she said her goodbyes. She had nurtured and cared for Samuel since birth, and now she had to let him go. The pain of parting was almost unbearable, but Hannah's faith sustained her. She knew that this was not the end, but the beginning of Samuel's journey with God. But she knew he was in God's hands. Hannah's trust in God was unshakable. She believed that God had a special plan for Samuel and that he would be protected and guided every step of the way. Her prayers for her son continued, and she found solace in knowing that God was watching over him. Her faith gave her the strength to endure the separation and to look forward to the future with hope. She visited Samuel every year and brought him a new coat. Each visit was a cherished moment for both mother and son. Hannah would bring a lovingly made coat, a symbol of her enduring love and care. These visits were a time of reunion and joy, a reminder that their bond remained strong despite the distance. Samuel treasured these moments, and Hannah's heart was filled with pride as she saw the young man her son was becoming. Samuel lived at the temple with Eli. The temple was a place of peace and learning where Samuel spent his days assisting Eli, the wise and kind old priest. Eli had taken Samuel under his wing, teaching him the ways of the temple and the importance of faith and service. Samuel admired Eli greatly and was always eager to help him with his duties. He helped Eli with his work. Whether it was cleaning the temple, preparing the sacred scrolls, or assisting with the daily rituals, Samuel was always there, ready to lend a hand. He felt a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment in his work, knowing that he was contributing to something greater than himself. One night Samuel was sleeping. The temple was quiet, and the only sounds were the gentle rustling of the wind and the distant hoot of an owl. Samuel lay in his bed, his mind drifting into dreams of the stories Eli had told him about the prophets and the miracles of old. He heard someone calling his name. "Samuel!" the voice called. It was a voice unlike any he had heard before, clear and commanding, yet filled with a warmth that made him feel safe. Samuel sat up, his heart pounding in his chest. Who could be calling him at this hour? Samuel thought it was Eli. He ran to Eli. In the dim light of the temple, he could see Eli's figure resting peacefully. "Here I am," Samuel said, his voice trembling slightly. "You called me?" "Here I am," he said. Eli stirred and looked at Samuel with a puzzled expression. "You didn't call me?" Eli asked, his voice groggy with sleep. Samuel shook his head, confused. He was certain he had heard someone call his name. "You didn't call me?" Eli asked. Samuel felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. Had he imagined the voice? He returned to his bed, his mind racing with questions. As he lay down, he tried to convince himself that it was just a dream. Samuel went back to bed, but just as he was about to drift off to sleep again, he heard the voice once more. "Samuel!" it called, even more insistently this time. Samuel's eyes flew open and he sat up, his heart racing. This happened again 2 more times. Each time Samuel ran to Eli, and each time Eli told him that he had not called him. By the 3rd time, Samuel was feeling both anxious and bewildered. What was happening? Why was he hearing this voice? Finally, Eli realized it was God calling Samuel. Eli's eyes widened with understanding. He had heard of such things happening before, but never had he imagined it would happen to Samuel. He knew he had to guide the boy in the right direction. He told Samuel, "Go back to sleep. If you hear the voice again, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" Eli's voice was calm and reassuring, and Samuel felt a sense of peace wash over him. He nodded, determined to follow Eli's instructions. "If you hear the voice again, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" Samuel returned to his bed, his heart still pounding, but now filled with a sense of purpose. He lay down, closed his eyes, and waited. The night was still, and Samuel listened intently, ready to respond to the voice that had called him. Samuel heard the voice again. "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening," he said. God talked to Samuel. He told Samuel important things about the future. Samuel grew up. He listened to God. He told people what God said. Samuel became a prophet. A prophet is someone who speaks for God. People listened to Samuel. They knew God was with him. The Israelites were God's people, but they had turned away from God. They were not following his rules. They were in trouble. They needed a leader. Samuel became their leader. He was a judge. He helped people solve problems. He reminded them to follow God. The people listened to Samuel. They respected him. The people wanted a king. They wanted to be like other nations. Samuel wasn't sure this was a good idea. He knew God was their true king. God told Samuel to listen to the people. God said he would choose a king for them. Samuel found Saul. Saul was a strong and handsome man. Samuel anointed Saul as king. This meant he poured oil on Saul's head as a special sign from God. Saul was a good king at first, but then he started disobeying God. God was not happy with Saul. God chose a new king, David. Samuel found David. David was a shepherd. He was a good and brave young man. Samuel anointed David as king. David was surprised, but he trusted God. Samuel continued to speak for God. He reminded the people to follow God's ways. He was a wise and faithful leader. He was respected by all. Samuel died when he was very old. The people were sad. They missed their prophet, their judge, their leader. They buried him in Ramah. They remembered all he had taught them. Samuel's life teaches us important lessons. He teaches us about faith and obedience. Even as a young boy, Samuel listened to God. He trusted God. He followed God's plan for his life. Samuel's story reminds us that God has a plan for each of us. If we listen to God and trust him, he will use us in amazing ways, just like he used Samuel.